Well, one of the things that's been endemic in AV for decades, for all the years that I've been involved in it, is there's a lot of resistance to change. Doesn't really matter what the change is, the change du jour. The change we're experiencing right now is around machine learning and AI. And I wrote an article a few months ago and we talked about it a little bit, but this whole idea that, microphones always needed to be close to the person speaking. You have physics involved, you have sound pressure levels. When they're further away, they're harder to use. These are like hard and fast standard rules, and all those rules are out the window right now because what we can do with audio cleaning algorithms stacked on top of each other is stick a microphone anywhere, on my shoes, on the ceiling, on the side wall, on the table, and not only make it sound as if it was right in front of me, but it also has the intelligence in the system to filter out everything other than my noise. We were talking before, the example of the new Beatles record that came out was with a track that John Lennon had created before he passed away that 10 years ago was unusable. They couldn't do it, but now we have the capability in digital audio to filter that out, and we do it in AV in real time. So that changes everything about what kind of microphones we use, where we put them, what's needed, how easy they are to install. It's a game changer. The same thing's happening in video with cameras aiming themselves. This change of machine learning and smarter devices changes how we build rooms. It doesn't matter anymore where a microphone is. So if you talk about the easiest to install microphone in the world is somebody handing you a microphone and you pick it up in your hand and hold it. No installation. One of the hardest microphones to install is in a dropped ceiling, in a ceiling tile. You have to bring in contractors. The color has to match. You have to bring power or power over Ethernet or something up there. It's not easy to put in. You can't just decide to buy one and have it delivered and put it up there. What I'm saying is that complexity doesn't need to exist anymore, because it doesn't matter if it's a beautiful beam-forming ceiling tile microphone, which works great. You just don't need the hassle of that if you can stick something on a table and it'll reject all the noise and work just as well. I think there are times when you're building a room where having one microphone somewhere out of the way is a great solution. I'm just suggesting that in terms of ease of installation, in many cases you don't have that and you don't need it, because this noise you would make moving the microphone on the table, there are now companies that are working on the ability to just filter that out and only share the voice. And if that's the case, you don't need the hassle of installing it. There may be some elegancies to continue to put them in. I think everything in AV has a place. You just have to pick the right application. But I don't think it's the de facto answer anymore. We would never, the same story from a different angle. You would never want to build a meeting room in a room with glass walls because of all the reverberant sound and all the noises. And that rule doesn't exist anymore because we can filter all of that out and make it sound great. So the idea is not so much I hate ceiling tile microphones, because some are good. The idea is that all the rules about why we were putting microphones and how we were controlling cameras, they're all changed. It's now a new world. I would definitely recommend anybody watching this to hop on over online and take a look at some of the demonstrations from some of the companies that are doing it. Crestron has a new one out right now on the video bar. Graham Walsh at Neat did some amazing demonstrations. What we can do with the sound cleaning algorithms is stunning. And yeah, I think that they're, good enough is always a question. What is, how high is up? Good enough is in the ears of the people that are listening. Yeah. But if you haven't listened recently, it's amazing what these devices can do. About 10 years ago, we were talking about huddle rooms, and a lot of analysts and consultants were showing you the inverted pyramid. I got to do a pyramid there, where the largest use case was the smallest room. The smallest use case was the largest room. The ones that we would build as integrators, boardrooms with microphones. So there were a lot of people coming up with these huddle room capabilities, rooms for 2, 3, 4, maybe a standalone device, an all-in-one. We stopped talking about it during the pandemic, because honestly, with all the diseases going around, nobody wanted to huddle with anybody else. So we're back here at ISC 2025. I haven't seen the word huddle room from anyone other than myself talking about it with you and a couple of others, but that's really what we're talking about again. We have some of the major manufacturers, Cisco, Neat, Poly, Jabra, Barco, have all come out with new solutions at the show or near the show that are meant for the small rooms, in many cases the BYOD solution. And Microsoft has come up with some new capabilities, working like with Barco, ClickShare, and a few others, where you can now identify that it's not just me talking through my notebook if I bring my own device, but Now that I've hooked it up to the room, it's a room device, so it'll do voice attribution for the other people. It won't cancel out their voices. And these are all around, US dollars, 1,000, 1,500 in that range for these BYOD support devices. The difference now is many of them have management capabilities. So you can plug them in and the IT manager knows they're there, knows that they're in use, they have an IP address. And in many cases, you can just, like with Cisco's, you can just plug in a touch panel and all of a sudden it's not a BYOD device anymore. Now it's a room system, a room codec. Neat's doing that as well. So this whole idea of we're now trying to sell to that inexpensive small room where they see most of the gaps that don't have equipment. One of the things I've done after my long career is I know my biases. I'm biased with a permanent codec and a permanent camera, things that I can always monitor, that I'll get an alert on the system if it got unplugged. If somebody has to come in and plug in a notebook, there's always a chance that that plug is not working, it got bent, that their notebook has the wrong connector. I'll always prefer something that I can check automatically in advance. And I'm sure AV people will feel the same way as well. But the reality is, we're not building rooms for 20, 30, 40, 60,000 quid anymore. We're building it so that we have an inexpensive, large scale. Because it used to be, and this goes back 20 years, that integrators would have one or two video conference rooms on a floor, and all the other ones would be just equipped for audio and presentation. And now, with the world we're in with hybrid working, every room has to support video. And that's just too expensive to do with some of the products that are out there. So I don't think a company that's all BYOD is making the right choice, nor do I think the other direction, all installation, is making the right choice. I think it's going to be a combination, a mix, based on the needs of the user. The first thing we have to say is that we have to admit that Microsoft Teams has become the predominant communication platform that people are using. There's still other very good ones out there, Cisco WebEx, Zoom, and some of the others, but Teams has really taken over. That's what everybody's interested in. Microsoft has had a hard time keeping their MTR on Windows on par with their MTR on Android, and now they've come up with their own version of Android called MDEP, which is the Microsoft Device Ecosystem Platform. And it does a few things. First of all, it standardizes Android, so it's a little bit more secure than some of the things that have been used out in the past. It also standardizes it amongst the vendors. So when Microsoft has a push for a new feature, they can get a little closer, a little more parity with their Windows capability. If there's a security bug or an issue, they can send out a patch and it covers more things. The companies that hadn't done a lot of development in Android for their own devices were some of the first to sign on to this, like Jabra and Yealink and a few others. They didn't really have a lot of Android devices, so they jumped on. The companies that had legacy Android devices that did a lot of development on it, like Poly before HP bought them, or Logitech, or Neat, they're a little slower to say that they're going to adopt this standard because they'll have to do a lot of programming to change what they do for no net gain. They're other than being within the Microsoft fold. But what I think we're going to see, as all Microsoft products, all Android products continue to need to be recertified, where there are some using Android 10 now still. I think 12 is the standard, 13, 14, the Android changes. As we continue to see these things get recertified, I believe at some point Microsoft is going to require that it be an MDEP platform in order to get the certification. Right now, they've said that only for new devices. So if I wanted to start a video processor company and make these products and do it on Android, I must use MDEP. But if I have an existing product, when the must is going to kick in, when the requirement is still not very clear, and it's something we have to watch. And the last quick point on that is that the MDEP is out and available, and the manufacturers that are using it have it. It's not being used by end users right now because Intune has to be converted over to a version of AOSP. Again, I'm in the weeds and I'm sorry, but the bottom line is it couldn't be used because the people using it couldn't manage it in a facility. Now that change is taking place, so by the time we get together at something like Enterprise Connect in a month or two, we will have end users using MDEP codecs in general use environments. If I were to switch hats and represent the people that haven't switched over yet, the complaint is that they've done so much development and put so many of their features on their version that they would have to redevelop it to be on their system, and then they lose a little bit of control. Do we like the idea that Microsoft will control all the Android platforms in the world? That's, the whole idea of Android was to have an alternative to a Windows-based compute in the room, and this kind of breaks that idea. Now, there are pros and cons for that argument as well. I'm not arguing it. That's just the position that they take. You can also argue, though, that Zoom and Google Meet and some of the other platforms all work just fine on Windows, which is a Microsoft platform. So it's not like it can't work that way, but that's the reluctance. The reluctance is, do we give up some of our control and capability and past innovation and pass that over to Microsoft? And the other fear also, if you remember what happened with a bad Cloudflare push, a couple of months ago, every device that got that push went down at the same time. If you have all devices on Android and an Android bug comes out, maybe you lose all your devices. Again, there are pros and cons. If there's a patch needed, you can patch them all in one shot. It's not a straightforward thing. I think it's inevitable, though. If everything is the way it's supposed to be, it'll be invisible for end users, and it'll be better for IT administrators because it'll be safer and easier to manage. It'll be better for Microsoft and harder for integrators, but then again, new integrators will find it easy because they don't have to do any development. And you'll start to see companies that have never made MTR devices start making them because they can just get the code from Microsoft. So if anybody would like more information on anything that I spoke about, a lot of easy ways. It's talkingpointzwithaz.com to reach out to me. I am all over the internet. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky if you'd like to reach out to me. I love speaking with end users. And I will also be presenting a session specifically about these pros and cons on MDEP at Enterprise Connect, which is March 17th in Orlando. So those are 3 good opportunities to run into me. And I love speaking with people in the industry. Anybody should be comfortable reaching out to me any way they can.